And the first thing that I basically discovered with doing that was Yeoman. Because we went to create, how are we going to create our application? And someone said, well, we should use Yeoman to do it. And so started looking into it and found out it's really pretty darn cool. So what is Yeoman? Is this going to work? All right, so why use Yeoman? All right, Yeoman is basically the thing that lets you get everything going that you need before you can really start coding stuff, right? So before you start, you got to decide, okay, how are we going to structure everything? This is going to be a huge project. It's going to be sold and deployed on millions of sites, so we need to make sure that our structure's pretty good. Are we going to have boilerplate that we use? We're going to have a testing framework. What's that going to be? Jasmine or Mocha or whatever. How are we going to do builds? How are we going to do deploys? What kinds of JavaScript libraries are we going to need? Do we want linting? Well, yes, probably. Do we need minification? Do we need minification up front or at the end? Do we want to work with live reload as we're working to increase productivity? All those things. There's different tools that will let you get all that stuff. So Yeoman is basically a workflow that lets you get all of those things using 3 different applications. Yo, which is the scaffolding app, Grunt, which is your build app, and Bower, which does package management. And you can kind of see Yo is from Yeoman. Yeoman is some sort of knight. I think the guys at the Tower of London are actually Yeoman. They wear those hats, I know. A Bower is obviously a bird. They store little shiny things inside of a house. So you can kind of think of Bower as package management, storing your packages inside your Bower. And Grunt's a warthog. I have no idea why Grunt is a warthog. Alrighty. So how does this stuff work? Basically, the Yeoman people, and it's a Google-sponsored project, put Yeoman out there, and they initially started with just a generator web app. And I don't even think it was called Generator to start. But Generator web app is something you can run, and all you got to have is just you need Node Package Manager. So this is all kind of built around Node. You need NPM. You install Yo, and then you can install your generator script. In this case, Generator web app. And you run that, and it's going to give you a very basic web app, JavaScript app that you can start with. It's going to have HTML5 boilerplate, jQuery, Modernizer, and Bootstrap. So that was sort of the first one that they put out there. But what they also did, which was really quite smart, is they put out there an API for building your own generator scripts. And they're also collecting data on how often these generator scripts are being downloaded and used, which gives them some very interesting data about what kinds of frameworks are the most popular that are out there. So instantly, there were generator scripts being added to the public, and all you have to do is just go into Node and register your generator script when you publish it. It's very easy to get on their official list at the yeoman.io site. There's last time I checked, there were 358 scripts out there. There's probably more than that at this point. They also, on their page, it's very nice, they show you how many times the scripts have been downloaded, and they have a star system too, so you can kind of tell if it's something brand new that some guy just put up, or if it's something that's actually being used in a lot of different spots. So you can basically, as you make some decisions about what kind of stack you want to use in your JavaScript application, go out there, look through all the community generators that are there, find the one that best suits your need, and then you can start with that and you can add things to it, or maybe you can just use that. When we started, we knew that right off the bat we wanted to use CoffeeScript and not just straight up JavaScript. And I forgot to mention something which I should have mentioned, is this is an opinionated workflow, right? So it's not a workflow system that is going to let you do whatever the hell you want to do in it. This is basically, you're saying, I want to use these particular tools in my workflow. So that's basically makes sense, right? Because everything that we do when we start putting an application together is we don't think, oh, well, if I want to switch out this JavaScript library later for this other JavaScript library, how, I need to make my app be able to do that. Typically, we just say, no, this JavaScript library is the best, I'm going to use it, and damn the torpedoes. So we wanted to use Jade, we wanted to use Coffee. We also wanted to use some other stuff. We obviously wanted to use Angular and jQuery. We wanted Jasmine as our testing framework. We wanted Node, so we're going to run a Node server using Express.js as the Node server there. We wanted to use MongoDB as the database. We've since actually changed that, but we were going to use Mongo as the library for that. We wanted to use stuff like underscore. Angular Bootstrap is an interesting thing. The generator scripts all come pretty much with Bootstrap. I haven't seen one yet that doesn't give you the option to install Twitter Bootstrap, but Angular Bootstrap is written all in Angular, so you don't need any of the JavaScript that comes with it at all. It's pretty sweet. Also, the default router that comes with Angular, the ng route, is, I don't know what it's called. It's not state-based, though. Angular UI router is a state-based router, and we wanted to use that, too. And then we also wanted Jade, Sass, not just CSS, CoffeeScript, whatever. So basically we came up with this stack of different technologies that we wanted to use, right? And it so happened that there was a script out there that pretty much fit this that you could run, which would give you most of this stuff. So I'm on, oh boy. I can't see the bottom of my screen. Why is that? That one? Ah, thank you. I still can't see my prompt, though. That's weird. You can see it? Oh, I can't. All right. Okay. Let me kill this. So I'm on their network here. I hope they don't mind. So there's several things out there. So we actually didn't use this generator script, but it's come out since then. So I've already got NPM installed. I've already got the basic script installed to install Yo and Grunt CLI. So I'm just going to download or rather run. I've already installed the generator script too that I wanted. So typically, if you go to a site where the script is, they'll tell you, okay, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. It'll give you the 3 commands that you need to get started. You just run them all from Node. I'm going to run Yo and then Angular-full stack, which is the generator script that I'm going to be using. Oh, I guess I need to create my directory first. So let's make a directory. Where am I right now? Aha. Don't want to be there. So I want to start a brand new project. Let's call it the Mad Outliner, and let's change into there. And now I'm going to run my Yo full stack. Then the name of my project. And then I'm going to provide a couple of command line things as well here. I'm going to say -- coffee. It'll give me CoffeeScript instead of JavaScript. And I'm going to say -- Jade. And then run that. And that's going to take a while. But first it's going to give us some prompts in just a second. There we go. So would you like to include Twitter Bootstrap? I'm going to say yes. Would you like to use the SC? I want Compass for sure. Okay, this part of this process is a little bit confusing. Which modules would you like to include? Press space to select. You'd think that pressing space would actually be selecting them, but no. If they're green, that means they're already selected. So if you want all of those, Angular Resource, Angular Cookies, and Angular Sanitize, and Angular Route, you could hit Enter. I know that I don't want Angular Route, but I'm just going to go ahead and install it right now with all of those. Would you like to include MongoDB with Mongoose? Well, that's... Sure. I like Mongo. All right. It's going to go do its thing, which is going to take just a minute. And it's going to throw an error on Jade for some reason. you sit here and watch. So the generator scripts, while we're waiting, are kind of cool in another way too, which, I mean, they're kind of thinking of this more as like a community type thing. But let's say you're on a team and you've got a large team, you're bringing developers on and off quite a bit of the time. If you can build your own generator script to basically bootstrap everything everybody needs and scaffold the application, you basically can give 3 lines of prompt to anybody that's starting on your team. They can type it and they can be up and running within minutes on your code base. And the generator scripts are not hard to do at all.
Can you show us one of those?
Hmm?
Can you show us one of the scripts?
I can, yeah.
We just put the one in.
There's tons of them out on GitHub too. I mean, you can just go and look at almost everything. And it should be done. Is that it? Yep, that's it. So we're done. So what did this give us?
Did you get the error?
Hmm?
Did you get the error?
For Jade? Yeah, it passed by almost immediately up at the top. It doesn't seem to make a difference, so I haven't investigated it yet. All right. Here we go. Oh, that's nice. All right. All right, so what did this give us here? All right, so we've got an app directory, a lib directory, node modules, and test. We've got a server.js file, which is actually our Express server, a package.json, and a bower.json. Now, and a grunt file. The package.json is basically where all of your dependencies are going to be installed, the node dependencies. So anything that you would normally install via npm to get into your project, that's what's going to be in here. And you can see that we've got Express, Mongoose, Async, and Jade up here at the top. And then we've got a whole bunch of stuff for, no, I don't want to do that. We've got a whole bunch of stuff just for dev that you would get if you did the -- save dev for your npm stuff. The bower.json has a very similar structure. Looks almost exactly the same. But you'll notice that these are JavaScript libraries. The Bower stuff can basically be done the exact same way. So I know I didn't get, well, let me just confirm that. So inside of app here, we've got Bower components. So anything that we installed via Bower is going to show up here under Bower components. And you've got Angular, all the Angular stuff, jQuery, JSON through Sass, Bootstrap. So I know I want to use like Angular Bootstrap too. So if you need a JavaScript library, rather than like downloading the JavaScript library, putting it in, you don't have to do any of that stuff at all. You just say Bower install, and then the name of the library, which is Angular-Bootstrap. And then, save dev or whatever. And Bower will just install it into the app. Boom, you're done. And if we go back, now I've got Angular Bootstrap. So you can also use this stuff. If you look at and I should just show you some of this stuff. So on the Yeoman site itself, everything is here that you really need to get started. The community generators, and then write your first generator, where they take you through. I'm not going to be able to scroll over there, though, am I? Maybe if I do that, there we go. So they take you through the whole bit, and this is actually kind of interesting. If you just type yo at a command prompt, they're really into ASCII art for some reason, so you get this thing. And this, you can actually do all this stuff here if you don't even have to remember the syntax. You can just go through the whole bit. If I get me out of here, they put all their names with Yeoman at the 1.0 there at the end. All right. All right, let's talk a little bit about the various pieces that we've got here. So we've got, as I was saying, the Bower JSON and the package JSON. We also have a grunt file. The grunt file is all of the grunt configuration that we need. And if you'll notice, it added things like Express, watch files for coffee, Compass, and there's some stuff for Jade in here too, I think, in addition to, there should be anyway, if I did this right. Yep, there it is. So under our scripts directory is where all of our JavaScript is going to be for the application side of things. And if you'll see, they're all coffee. So it did what I wanted. It didn't put in JavaScript, it put in coffee. And under views, we've got Jade. Has anyone here used Jade before? Is it like commonly known about? This is the best thing since sliced bread, especially if you're used to using like Stylus or Sass or something like that. It's writing HTML using a very similar kind of syntax. You don't ever have to write an angle bracket in your life again, which is the best part of it. You can chain things together. It uses standard tags that they're used to, but everything is auto-closing. You don't ever have to close a tag. There's sites out there where you can just go take your HTML, plug it in, it'll convert it to Jade for you. It's very easy to use. It makes sense. So I highly recommend looking into it if you haven't used it ever, because it'll save you a lot of time and hassle ultimately. Alright, so it looks like they've given us everything we wanted here. How do you run it? Well, that part's pretty easy. I think I'm still in the directory, right? So you just say grunt serve, or grunt server in the older versions. I'm not sure why they changed it. And this is going to start our app up. Run through all the grunt modules. And while this is starting, I should mention that the most powerful part of all of this really is all of the contribs that you can get through grunt. Grunt is basically clearing the way for us to get rid of all of the stuff that you don't normally want to have to think about. A good example is MinSafe. There's an option for most of the scripts for a lot of the community generators out there that you can run --MinSafe or specify MinSafe somehow to actually generate minification safe JavaScript right off the bat. You don't have to do that though, because there's a grunt task that at the point that you go and you put your code into production, you can just run it through an ngmin, and boom, you've got MinSafe code. So this is all that it gave us here. We've got our application. It installed HTML5 boilerplate, AngularJS, Karma, Express, and Mongo with Mongoose. And boom, we're up. And I can change this, of course, with the grunt live reload. If I go to, well, not the controller, I want to go to the view. And let's say I want to say, hello, hello, and then switch back. Grunt live reload runs, and it's done. So you see the changes as you're working in the views boom, right away. Saves so much time not having to just press Command-Shift-R a zillion times a day. You can't believe what a pleasure that is. All right. So,
what does it look like when you make an error here, and then
in your stuff, it'll throw an error in your console actually here. So you can see this is the grunt console that's running right now, and you can see it listed out the gets that I did when I hit the root directory there, the default route. And it also says file, and it shows what file I changed. It'll throw an error here, and I think it beeps too, though I wouldn't be sure about that because I have bad hearing. So. And your app won't load too. That's the first key. You'll get a blank screen, and then you have to check the console, right, to see what's going on.
You said support HTML5?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. I mean, HTML5 is basically, HTML5, CSS3, and what's the third thing? I'm blanking. Maybe that's it. I thought there was a third thing.
A lot of JavaScript.
Yeah, JavaScript. Yeah. Yeah.
I saw .header, but a lot of that stuff looked like HTML4 that was on that particular.
Well, there are ways that you can make your in Angular make your views and stuff HTML5 compliant by using the data ng. What is it? I can't remember the exact tag. You don't have to though. At this point the difference is, do you get the flash before it reloads all the elements, or do you not get the flash before it reloads all the elements? So, but it certainly supports it all if you want to write HTML5 compliant stuff. Let me change this back again, just because I like it. All right, so that's changing like your views. So let's take a look at the Express server part of this. The one thing I didn't like about this particular generator script, the full stack generator script, is that it gives you the Express part of it as JavaScript instead of as Coffee. There's another one out there called Angular Generator Express that I use to start the actual project that I'm on, and it actually gives you the Node server part, the Express server, as CoffeeScript. So, at this point I would say, all right, I've got to just change this stuff around to CoffeeScript, but that's not hard to do. It's just a matter of converting the JavaScript files that they give you to Coffee, and then making sure that your grunt file is going to be watching those CoffeeScript files and converting them for you. So let's look at this. This is a pretty standard Express server config file. We've got Express, we've got Mongo as a requirement. So notice it's this lib thing here. This was another thing I thought was a little bit jinky about this. They put the server under lib. I would have named it server, but whatever. So if we look under lib, we've got controllers, we've got database stuff, and we've got our models. And they basically provide us a thing model. They provide a way to generate that thing model through this dummydata.js file. And if you look here, it's providing HTML5 boilerplate, AngularJS. So this is all the stuff that we're actually seeing on that screen there. So if I want, I can just add something here and say, I've added, what did I add? Angular Bootstrap. Yes, Eric, my computer is slow. You should get me a new one. All right. I don't think I messed... Did I mess that up? It's JavaScript, so it doesn't matter. But all right, did that work? No, it didn't.
Yeah, that's what I have to think in there.
And didn't somebody ask for an error?
Oh, no, it did work. I just needed to reload. So basically what's happening here is that the grunt file is restarting every time it detects a change in any of these files, and we can actually see that on the console. Stopping the Express server, starting the background Express server. When the Express server starts, as part of the routine that it runs through, it requires, where is it? It requires libdummy data. So it's going to run that every time. That's going to run, it's going to populate those tables into, now I do have Mongo running locally here. The script to connect to Mongo, which is right here, if you look, will basically let you connect to Mongo Lab or Mongo HQ or your local running instance. So you got to have one of those three going for it so that it can have something to connect to. But I've got it running local, and it connected there. It populated that stuff in there, and then we've got a REST API here, which is using Mongoose and the thing object, and it's saying that if somebody hits /API/awesome things, it's going to return to you what it finds in the Mongo database that has the thing object. This just gives you what it's going to do if it errors out and how it's going to call that controller and the APIs. So inside, that's our, and the beauty of this structure is that the entire Node application is a separate server basically from the JavaScript application. So all of our front-end code is under app here, while all of the Node stuff is under lib. So under app, in our Angular application here, the front end to it is basically app.coffee, which has some routes in it. It's got some require stuff here, and then it's got a route provider and a location provider. So it's saying when the route provider is /, use the partials main template with this particular controller, otherwise go to /. And then set the behavior to HTML5 mode. So right now, if we hit /, it's basically going to load partials main. So what's partials main? So that's our view. That's our Jade file right here. And it's going to use the main controller, which is the main.coffee file under controllers. So that controller, for our particular application here, Angular.module, is going to call API awesome things. It's going to return that, and it's going to set that in the scope of the main.jade file, which is doing an ng repeat over thing and awesome things, showing the thing.name and the thing.info. Yeah?
Main.jade, is that compiled to HTML, or how
Yes.
does that read?
Yeah, so there's a inside of the grunt file again, there's a watcher, which is basically watching for any changes in the Jade files, and when it sees those, it's going to make HTML files for them.
And is it main.html then, or
Yeah.
main?
Yeah, yeah. So,
There is sticking out .html and
yep, yep.
What kind of control do you have over caching?
Caching in the browser?
Site caching. No, not browser. Server caching.
I would think you'd have to add something yourself if you wanted to do that. Or is there a JavaScript caching engine that you recommend, Eric? Usually we try to prevent caching, so I spend most of my time setting headers so that I don't have to
That
cache.
really did kind of throw me off because, like you say, we've just been trying to avoid it at all.
Yeah,
Express has tons of middleware
for doing that sort of thing.
all anything I've ever wanted it middleware for.
Yeah, Nginx usually.
Just deploy it to like figure it all out for you.
Yeah, well, okay, I'm glad you said that, actually, because if you go to the Angular generator full stack, they have a link to the website here. Yeah, here we go. The Daft Monk. One of the things that you can do with this, actually, which is very nice, and they show you how to do it right here, is generate it for Heroku and deploy it. So basically, if you've got Heroku set up, you can get it up on Heroku in 5 steps there with Mongo. And it's pretty much as fast as, you saw me run the script before. It doesn't take that long to run it. All right. Where was I? I was talking about the controller, right? When last we left. All right. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was that we wanted to use Angular UI router instead of the default router that comes with. So what's involved in replacing that? You kind of go through those steps. I'm going to clear some stuff off the screen here. So our app.coffee is where our routes are, right? We've got to get Angular UI router installed, first of all. We don't have it. It's not in Bower Components. So let's install that. So let's go back to here. I can actually leave this running. I'm going to kill it just to be mean. And, I misspelled the app when I created the app. That's terrible. Now I got to start over again. All right, so we're going to install Angular Bootstrap. So I wrote the name down here, I know. Yeah.
You mean UI router?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. I've already got that one. Oh yeah, here it is. Angular-UI-router. So that's all we got to do to install it. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier. So one of the things that it's doing when you're installing all this stuff and when it's installing everything through the script is it's making those libraries available to the JavaScript application. And the way it does that is it basically, and we got Angular UI router now if you see, it basically adds that stuff into your index file. So if you look at the Angular website, they basically say the easiest way to get these things included is just to put them into your index.html. So you can see here that as I'm doing Bower install, blah, 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 it's actually adding these into my index.html for me. So I don't have to worry about doing that little piece in order to get it into the application. It's just doing it automatically as I run the Bower install command. So it's available to the app at this point. Now,
just a quick question on that. So, as part of the grunt process or something else, are there tools available to consolidate all of those into a single file, so you don't have to do like 36 server hits to get each little piece?
there are.
Okay.
And actually, when you go to production, it comes with a default dist grunt target built in already, right there. And one of the targets that it runs is a what is it, Eric? You did it all.
I didn't do it with this tool, though.
You didn't do it with this.
I was stupid.
Yeah, he had to do a bunch of work, but it's where is it?
You manually minified all your JavaScript files?
Every single time.
He does it really well. And there's something to be said for, paying attention by hand and doing it.
Here, it's running them all through ImageMin, SVGmin, and HTMLmin. It may not come with this by default, but there's an ngmin task that's available in Grunt that you can add in here.
Yeah, it's further up.
Is it further up?
Maybe down from there, but
There it is. Yeah.
So does it just get rid of all those script headings, or what does it do?
I think it goes through and it actually replaces all of the module references with the strings that it needs in order to work in the minified fashion.
Probably whatever it says in the comments.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I looking at? Index.jade or whatever your index file. Like the comments surrounding each one have a path on it. That's probably what it compiles it to, I would guess.
Yeah, there's an interesting little utility out there called grunt-bower-install that a guy created. And let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh yeah, there it is. Steven Plus Plus. It's an interesting last name. This'll basically, if you set this up, you have to do a little bit of work here, but it'll inject them in as you well, now I'm trying to remember why I needed this at one point. I can't remember. But basically, you take and you add this little HTML tag into your index.html or index.jade, and then as you add things, it'll automatically put them in there for things that it don't normally get installed that way automatically. It may not be needed anymore. It looks like it's doing it now. All right. I was talking about Angular UI router, wasn't I?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a couple of things for Angular UI router you have to do. One is you have to change in the index.jade file. One of the nifty things about this is that here is where all your HTML goes. Basically goes into that div right there, and it uses the ngView directive to do that. So Angular UI router comes with its own directive, which is called UIView. So you have to change that there to get to Angular UI router. The other thing you have to do is to change your route provider. I'm not sure if I remember how to do this off the top of my head, so I have an example that I will show you that it's already done in. Where is it? Okay. So here's an example of one using Angular UI router. And the difference here is that instead of just passing a route in and having the browser redirect to a particular route, particular page, you're actually just setting states. And it makes a lot of sense because most of what we do inside of a JavaScript application is basically just changing the state of the application. We're not really changing from page to page most of the time. Sometimes we're changing the state so that a particular part of the page is different. Particular templates getting loaded, subsection, what have you. And this allows you to do that in a very clean, nice way. So you set states. Instead of the route provider, you have a state provider. You have a URL router provider, which is a little bit different. And then in your state provider, you basically define what different states are. So you can see here that I took the default state that they provided as a route, set it up here. The syntax looks almost exactly the same. I added a new route, or a new state, in this case here, and gave it a different template and a different controller. The last piece you have to do is you have to add this UI.router here so that it can use the new thing. But once you do those three things, basically, that's all you have to do to get Angular UI router into it.
And can you nest, or do you nest these as well?
Yes.
In a single
Yes.
string?
They have there's several ways that you can define like a default, and that default can be like I forget the term they use. It's generic, or I can't remember. Basically, you say this is like the parent for all these other things, and then you nest those other things underneath of that, and they can each have different controllers. They can have the same controller. It's the example that they give on the UI-router site is of like a view where you have like 4 or 5 different frames, and you want to switch out content in just one frame, changing the state of stuff, rather than having to like reload the whole page all the time. It works very, very nicely. All right. So I'm going to go back and undo that change that I made. Actually, I'm not running it anymore, am I? Well, let me show you. I have to autocomplete to get it now because I misspelled it. Show you a couple of things about the generator script too. So, in addition to being able to just run the script and get everything scaffolded, you can also install individual things as you're working. Here we go. So these are all the generator, like the sub-generators that are available for this particular one. So if we want to add a new controller, all we have to do is say :controller, name the controller, new directive, :directive, name the directive, etc., etc. So if you want to, for example, add a new controller, and what do we want to call the controller? Mad Eric. You're mad, Eric. Boom, it's done. So you can see it created the controller in maderic.coffee and the app script controller. It also created a test. And I should take a, remind me to talk about karma in a second. And if we go and we look, we'll see it. Sure enough, we now have our new controller. And also, if we look in index.jade, it should be in here too. And sure enough, it is. So all we would have to do to get this to work is to add a new route for it. And then we could hit it. Same with directives, same with filters, whatever. All you have to do, rather than having to go in, copy, remember that you got to add it to index.jade, put it in the right directory, blah, 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 blah. Just don't worry about that, any of that. Just say, yo, name of your generator, : name of the thing that you're going to add, filter, whatever it is, and then you're done. All right, so karma. I suspect that most of the people that download these things never even try to run the test because it does not work out of the box at all. First of all, you got to have...
Right?
Huh?
You did, though.
I only tried because I knew I had to talk about it. And it was actually very frustrating me because, like, every single testing framework I've ever tried to use, they just don't freaking work. It really pisses me off. It ought to be the one thing that always works really easy.
It's a test in and of itself, just to see how committed you are.
Yeah. It sort of is, isn't it? All right. I think I can run this from here, not from a level up, but let's see. So you got to have karma installed. It didn't install karma for me. Why? I don't. We're going to run tests. There doesn't seem to be a karma file here. Karma.conf.js is surprisingly missing from what it gave us by default. Oh, and this is going to install Phantom.js too, so that's cool. I've already got it though. Are you done? Nope, now it's done. Alright, so we don't have a conf.js, so we got to run karma init. And that's going to ask us some questions. Yeah, we want to use Jasmine. No, we don't want require.js. Yes, I want Chrome. Blank line means go to the next question. Okay, so it wants to know where my tests are, right? So if I look back here, I can see that everything's in test, spec, and then various things .coffee, but they aren't named spec in the file. So we're going to type test /spec /star/star.coffee. And I don't really want to do that. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, so now we should have a karma.conf.js, and sure enough we do. Will this work? How do we know? So normally you're going to run karma, you just say karma start, right? Is that what it is? You can also just run it from grunt. There's a grunt test, which basically will just turn around and run karma start. But if you're using a different testing framework, it would do whatever is being run for that particular one. Let's see if this works. I seem to remember there was something else I had to do which was really irritating in order to get it to work. Oh yeah. I actually made a note. Is this going to work? Come on. So they did give us default tests when they when we ran the script. It actually runs a test, tests the main controller. It's going to start Chrome. No, see, I need a new computer.
Is that your fan?
Yeah, you can hear my fan from all over there. Oh, okay, our tests failed. Why the hell did they fail? Encountered a declaration exception. Module is not defined. Well, why is module not defined? That's a very strange problem. Module is kind of part of Angular, so
Or you act like you're changing between.
no, I undid that. I undid that. I know actually why this is failing. So I created my this main.coffee file, right, was given to us inside of test, but I think this has to be angular.module. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But the big thing that's going on here is that the dependencies, which we need in order to run all this stuff inside of our application, are not actually being provided to the test engine. So the runner.html file is missing all of those scripts. Well, it's not this one, though. Which one is it? Now I'm confused.
Is it the karma file?
Are they in here? Can't remember now. Let me look at my other text.
No, it's, yeah, your dependencies are in the karma column. Like for where Jasmine is defined and everything?
Well, it's not Jasmine. It's all the libraries that we've installed via Bower. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we installed via Bower that we need in order to run Karma. Yeah, they do go in here. I'm sorry. This is it. You're right. They're in the Karma conf. So this should probably do it. If we go back over here. Yeah, see, it's only rolling this test spec coffee. That's pretty lame. So let's give it all of this. App scripts, star coffee, star test spec, star. Okay, that looks right, I think. Let's try that. So that list of files that I pulled up there, it looks very similar to the list of dependencies that you'll find in the index.jade file. Now, of course, we don't need SAS to run our tests, so probably not tests, but you're going to need all of these things. So anything basically that you put into here that you're going to need in a test, you got to go over and add it to that. And of course it worked. Main controller is not a function of undefined. I have no idea why that failed. And I don't really want to find out because I'm never going to run these tests again. So let's just get rid of that and start clean. So anyway, if you're going to be using your testing framework, you're going to have to go through a little bit of pain to get that set up if you're using Angular full stack. Now, I think that there are other generator scripts out there that do a better job of setting up the testing stuff initially, but they're trying to remain kind of testing agnostic, and maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should ask you, do you want Jasmine right off the tip? All right, I showed you how to add some dependencies. We talked about Express and Mongo. We talked about Angular UI Router. Oh, I'd installed the wrong version of Angular UI Router. That's why that didn't work. I showed you how to add a controller. All right, so I have this little app that I wrote a couple of weekends ago that I thought I would walk through because it does a couple of interesting things. Let me get into it and start it up first of all. So this was for my wife. She wanted a way to, we're writing all this legal software for her, so she wanted a way to basically get in and be able to create outlines for courses and change them, add things. And I thought, when she told me this, I'm like, there's got to be a JavaScript library that somebody's written that lets you create like a standard, Roman numeral type outlining. I've seen outlining with like the scientific notation and stuff. Could not find anything, so I wound up actually kind of rolling my own to get it to work. And I don't know why there's nothing out there. Maybe everybody just writes their own, and so they don't care about sharing it.
But you should take a look at Concord.
Concord?
Yeah, Concord.
Concord.
It was written by Dave Miner. It's with powerspargo.io.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
If outline is ever an issue for anybody, then you can look at Dave Miner.
Yeah.
He's obsessed.
You can just use Fargo probably too.
Yeah, probably.
So this is the final version of the app here. Basically, it lets you, has a tree. You can expand and collapse the tree. You can delete nodes. It'll renumber the nodes when you delete them. You can add things. You can delete things. You can also edit stuff. So obviously cannot spell tonight. Whatever. So that's sort of what the final version of what I came up with. So to get here, I basically started, like I usually do, by trying to find something that was as close as possible already that I could steal. And it turned out that there was a guy out there named Nick Perkins, who I actually emailed and got permission to use his stuff. But he has a GitHub project that's a tree directive. And he basically had all of the stuff in Bootstrap already and in Angular to do this stuff here. He had provided a data structure, and he had some code for basically nesting the data and pulling it out recursively and stuff like that. So all I had to do was add the stuff to number it correctly, because he didn't have like Roman numerals or numeric numerals. And I had to, again, I went and stole some code off of Stack Overflow to convert like real numbers to Roman numerals and vice versa. Basically patched it together. I had this up and working in, I don't know, like probably 2 hours, which was probably longer than most of you would take. But I forgot to preface my talk with saying I hadn't used, I used to have a book on my desk about a certain number of years ago that was about this thick that was called the JavaScript Bible, right? it had every single thing in it about JavaScript you would ever need to know was all in a book that was like this thick. I mean, it was that wide, but it was a pretty big book, but that was like everything. It was all in there. And I hadn't really used JavaScript much until about a year ago when I got on the project with these guys over here. So really, I am pretty much a JavaScript neophyte. So, you know, all I can say is that it's very interesting, and I'm really liking it. I have to say, too, we've been doing Backbone for a year. Angular is like a wonderful breeze of fresh air. It is so much easier to work in Angular. And I don't really know why, other than the use of the directives, which is really the most powerful part of Angular, really makes it easier to like see what you're doing as you're putting stuff into the pages. So if we could start over again, I think it would be Angular. Alright, so what did I wind up doing here? Really, I only had to add 3 different things. I had to add some data. And to do that, I basically created a model in Mongoose. And this model has the name of the outline and then the info for the outline. Now, if I was going to do this correctly, I probably would not use schema.types.mixed here, but would actually like create some nested documents and stuff. But I was in a hurry, so I just threw this together. I modified this, which came with the generator script. Remember, they actually have the thing generator in here. I just created an outline generator, and I added some outline data. And the format of this data, which is just JSON, is basically the format that Nick has used in his tree data thing. And then I went into the API, added and you can see here where I've got a commented out return of just the data without getting it from the database, but actually we're actually returning the data from the database. So we're just doing a find in Mongo, and we're returning the stuff in the outlines table there. So that part's pretty simple, right? We've got data coming out of the database. We can go here, we can say API/outline, and we can see what our JSON looks like as it's going to come out of the database. So this is going to be our model for our directive that we're going to create in order to make this whole thing work. So that's the server side. So on the JavaScript side, as I said, I've got a directive, which most of this I stole right off of his, I shouldn't say stole, I used his experience and wisdom to make my work easier. Actually, I wound up modifying this quite a bit from its original. But I've got this directive. I've got a filter that I had to create in order to do something kind of funky at the end, which is very simple. And I've got a route for it, the outliner route. It's going to use this onlineview.html and this controller. Okay, so what is this controller doing? Let's talk about that first. The controller is basically going to set some outline data into the scope for the view. We're going to initialize it to a default empty array. We're then going to hit the API. We're going to get that JSON data that we want to provide as the model to the view, and we're going to set that on the scope. This part here was when I was playing around with it without the data, so we could probably just get rid of it altogether now. We've got a couple of methods here that the page is going to need, scope.add and the scope.outline handler. And this outline handler is actually where the bulk of the stuff is going to happen in the directive. So that seems pretty simple, right? We've got some views. We have the outline view that I created. And this is where we're going to invoke the directive. So the directive is called course-outline. And you'll notice this is snake-cased. I don't know why they snake-case some things and they don't other things. Like filters aren't snake-cased, but directives are for some reason. There's there's 4 different ways that you can refer to a directive from inside of your view. And you can specify which one you want to use inside of the directive itself, which is this restrict thing here. So this is restricting it to elements. It's EA, I can't remember what they are. I've only seen like E and A actually in use, but if you look at the Angular tutorial on directives, it'll tell you what all that stuff is. We're using a template URL here, so all of the data that's coming in for this particular directive is going to be rendered through this particular template. Now, something I discovered is that if you use template URL, that means it's going to be an AJAX call. There's a URL, I think it's URL just by itself, which will just be a straight up get. But if we want to do an AJAX call here. And then we're going to set our scope. We're going to limit our scope to be these particular things, tree data, on select, and init selection. And then all of the magic, basically all of the coding that happens inside of a directive always happens within this link. There's another kind of directive, maybe one of you guys know, is it a module directive? I can't remember. But there is another way you can do this, but I've only ever used the link. So a lot of this is just the code that's making stuff happen inside of there. There's methods for like recursing the tree rows. There's methods for adding the branches to the stuff. There's methods for turning things into Romanized numbers and then turning them back again. There's methods for creating the outline ID that we're going to shove into the data so we know where it is when we pull it out. There's stuff for renumbering when we delete things. So this is basically where the bulk of the work is going on. And that's just plugged in through the directive right here, which has some parameters that it's taking. It wants... ooh, that's interesting. I would think that should be like that. Now I probably broke it. That's the problem with CoffeeScript and all that stuff is their white space, sensitive. Our initial icon leaf is going to be none. On select, we're going to call this method outline handler for the branch, which, if you remember, was back in our controller. There it is right there. That's going to set this thing in the scope.output, and then that's it. Okay. It's not really needed. So all this stuff is tied together. Is this making sense? I'm just walking through the pieces of this, but they all kind of come together at the end, so that you're hitting your controller. The controller is going to hit the API, get the data. It's then going to load the view. The view is going to fire the directive. It's going to load the view through the route. The view is going to fire the directive. The directive is going to run all this stuff on its link. And the way these work are very interesting because there are 2 phases, and somebody who knows more about Angular can probably explain this better than me. But there are 2 phases to every page load. There's the linking phase and the digest phase. And what they do is they go through the DOM and they do the digest on all of the directives that are there. And then they go back and they link all of the data into those digest spots or DOM elements or whatever they are at that point. So it's done as a 2-phase thing. And the most common error I think that you'll see as you're working with a digest or a directive is you'll get the, what does it say, digest is already in scope or something like that. The first time you'll see it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's what's happening there. And the problem is that the timing inside of the directives is a little bit hard to get sometimes. You have to make sure that you do not actually start loading your view, for example, before you've actually provided the data to the directive that it needs to load. Once it does do so, that was the reason, as a matter of fact. No, it's not there. No, now I've forgotten where I did it. There's a place where I set the array. It's probably in the directive, isn't it?
Example course outline equals null there.
Yes, in the scope. Thank you. Why am I not seeing that? I was looking right at it. Thank you. Yeah, right there. So we have to set that to an empty array because the first thing that the directive is going to try and do is basically load the page data. And if it gets nothing, I could probably comment this out and show the problem. It's going to blow up. Yeah. Cannot write properly length of undefined because it basically tried to run over an undefined variable there. So what this does is it basically tells it to run over an empty array, and then as soon as the data is added to the scope, it has a watch function that it's going to run. There it is, scope.watch tree data on change, and then it's going to fire that. So basically the directive is constantly listening, and this is how all of the directives work as far as I know in all of Angular. It's basically watching all the time for the model to change, and then when the model changes, it updates its linking again. Which is really cool. It gives you the ability to do things where as you're typing in the screen, it's automatically changing other parts of the screen for you because you're changing the model as you're working. All right, so that all comes together. The last thing I wanted to show was the filter. So let me show you how to include a filter, and that would be in the template, which I haven't showed you yet. Does this all fit if I do that? Sort of. Okay, so this is the template for the directive is running through to build all this data every time. So you can see it's doing an ng repeat on the row and the tree underscore rows. The tree underscore rows is the data that's being created inside of the directive. It's got some animation. It's got some CSS classes it's using. It's got some click events. It's got this little thing here. Now let me take this out just to show you what it looks like. And you should see grunt reload. Thank you, grunt. Okay, so notice that I've got all these dots and extra stuff in here. This is because this field is actually inside of my JSON is what I'm using to track the level that the particular entry in the course outline is at. And if we look at my dummy data, you can see that I'm setting those. So I've got data, and then I've got the outline ID. So it's basically kind of an ID field that says this is where this particular piece of the outline is inside of here. So 1.c in this, or it could be 1.c.a.2. Whatever, ongoing forever and ever in outline format. So I didn't want to display that stuff. So rather than create another piece of data that I would have to also display and then have the actual ID stored somewhere else, I just wrote a filter that basically filters out this stuff. And the filter itself is very simple. There are tons of built-in filters, I should add, too. There's a currency built-in filter. There's a whole bunch of stuff that are just there out of the box. And the way you invoke them is just to use that pipe, like I had there, and then the name of the filter. So you could just say pipe currency on any field that you want to be currency, and it'll just turn it into currency right away. And that comes built in. So this is my own filter that I built. I called it display label. It's not snake-cased. I do not know why. That took me a long time to figure out. So here's the filter. We've got our module, the filter. This is the name of the filter. It's going to take an input. We're going to take that input. We're going to split it on the period. And then we're only going to return the last... maybe this, I'm assuming that there's only 3 levels here, possibly. Maybe that's a problem. But then applying this filter, and all I had to do was put it in there as display label. It's going to now reload. Grunt, please.
Did you save the changes?
Yeah, the WebStorm saves them automatically. Come on. Yeah, it did it. I know, my computer is... I need a new computer. First thing Eric says to me, you don't have an SSD drive. He just watched me type one thing. I'm a second-class citizen.
You should get yourself an SSD drive.
I should. Someone should pay for that. All right. That's it. I think that's enough. We've been here an hour and a half. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So, did you run into any weird problems using Jade along with Angular? That was one of my fears using some kind of HTML preprocessor along with something like Angular. I was afraid all the special characters like double curlies and whatever would interfere with the preprocessor.
There have been a couple of times where I've been a little bit stumped as to how to do something in Jade, but I've pretty much figured it out eventually, and I attribute that to just me being a newbie with Jade. But I've been able to get it all to work eventually. Actually, putting in the directive in Jade was a little bit tricky because I had an example of how to do it in HTML, and I just jaded that and then put that in, and that didn't work. So then I had to start playing with it a little bit. So I think there are going to be situations that you run into where you got to like kind of dig into it a little bit. It's like using stylus for CSS, for example. There are places where you got to go look at the API and to know what you're doing. But for the most part, yeah, it's just straight up, very simple to understand. They use the pipe symbol to basically mean, continuation of an element. That's a little bit tricky at first, but for the most part.
You have to escape it or something? If you're using it the way Angular uses it, you have to escape it in Jade or something like that?
No, nothing like that at all. Okay, so like if you've got like an anchor tag, right, and you want to start the anchor tag, you want to end the anchor tag, but on the same row you want to include some other element that isn't part of the anchor tag. That was a little tricky for me, but I eventually figured that out. Because Jade basically it's like every line of code is basically going to correspond to a new line in your view, just to kind of keep things straight. But I don't know. I'm a newbie with it, but people that I trust have said use it, and I've really enjoyed using it. It makes your HTML look so much cleaner and so much easier to understand. And maybe it seems easier to understand because I'm used to that syntax in Sass or Stylus, but I mean, would you say I'm wrong?
I can't use anything else.
Yeah. It's kind of like CoffeeScript. Once you start learning CoffeeScript, it's like I can't write JavaScript anymore. Even though I know JavaScript's a real language and CoffeeScript isn't.
How would you compare something like Jade to something like Haml, for example?
Jade is based on top of Haml. It's almost all of its work is Haml, really, under the covers. So
what does it add to Haml?
I think just the white spacing syntax stuff.
I thought
I don't know really.
Has
I don't
the white
know.
spacing too.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, they're really similar.
Any other questions?
WebStorm. How do you like WebStorm?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So we're having a presentation next month on WebStorm.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because I was going to buy it.
It's worth it. Yeah, no, it's worth it. Though Alan got it for like $10 somehow on some deal. So he's like on some site where like they give you the deal of the day or whatever. Yeah. So he's like, I had to buy it. It was $10. I'm like, well, shit, yeah. But I paid the full amount for it. And
Yeah, it's like $50.
yeah.
And it's got pretty good Angular support too, right?
It does. It does. It seems to have support for everything as near as. And I use IntelliJ most of the time.
Okay.
So I was already familiar with stuff. The one thing in the latest version of WebStorms, I don't know why they did this, but Shift Command F now gets you the text define. Whereas in IntelliJ, it's Shift Control F. So I have to like remember every time. But maybe IntelliJ 13 is changing as well. I don't know. I was unhappy they changed the keyboard shortcut.
Too bad that the upgrade price is nearly the full price for IntelliJ.
Oh, it always is. But if you bought it, we bought it within the last 60 days.
We probably have two versions behind it.
This is version 7. You're using version 7 of WebStorm.
You know, I don't even know.
All the way over there, I think, under WebStorm.
Thank you.
Yeah, about WebStorm. Go one.
There we go. 7.
Yeah, you're the latest. Thank you very much.
Sure.